Federal lawmakers and United Nations discuss humanitarian crisis in the Northeast. I'm Linda Akibe, and you're welcome to the Gavel. It's a sad state of affairs at internally displaced people's camps in the northeastern part of the country. People in the camps are dealing with starvation, unsanitary conditions, and health emergencies. The situation has deteriorated to the extent that hundreds of internally displaced persons went on the streets of the Maiduguri-Kano road to protest a shortage of food supply to a camp in the state capital. Lawmakers and a UN representative held a meeting during the week to discuss this problem. The United Nations puts the number of internally displaced persons in Nigeria at 2.2 million. According to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, 2.152 million people are displaced in Nigeria, mostly from conflict in the northeast. To make matters worse, internally displaced persons in Nigeria live in harrowing conditions with a lack of basic infrastructure, starvation, poor health care and unsanitary conditions. This meeting between the House Committee on Internally Displaced Persons and representatives of the United Nations is examining how to address the challenges confronting internally displaced persons in Nigeria.
Wherever we go, we find that IDPs are marginalized. They need special attention. Not all the legal policy frameworks of government sometimes are directed towards IDPs. And therefore, promoting IDP policies and legal frameworks becomes one way of having an effective response. In this sense, we take note of the fact that an IDP policy has been on the table for quite some time in Nigeria. We are keen to understand the reasons why it has not moved forward, what we need to do to move it forward in terms of advocacy, and to have it adopted.
These committee members have visited some of the IDP camps in the northeast. They know firsthand the deplorable conditions in the camps and the factors which led to these problems.
Actually, if we are to consider the issue of internal displacement as a foremost priority, I'm sure you will agree with me, my colleagues, that we need someone who can actually access Mr. President and be able to advise, on case-by-case basis and at a very higher level. So there is a need to escalate representation at that stage. I also think there is inadequate appropriation. For instance, in this year's budget, the two agencies that are into both disaster preparedness and emergency assistance, as well as the management protection needs as well as assistance, that is the National Commission for Refugees, have a combined budget of less than 3 billion naira. 3 billion naira, by my calculation, can only give lunch to IDPs for a week, a population of that 2.2 million, and it is finished. And I think really there is a need maybe to even show the contemporary appropriations, the kind of budgets that have been made in other countries, to convince the Nigerian authorities that there is a need actually to take this matter very, very seriously.
The federal government has put together several interventions to address the horrifying plight of internally displaced people in the country. But so far, these interventions are not enough, and these experts say until there is a comprehensive and coordinated approach backed by well-thought-out policy by government, is a tough future ahead for internally displaced persons. The much-talked-about school feeding program was the center of discussions at a public hearing in the House of Representatives.
This is a joint committee session of the House of Representatives Committees on Poverty Alleviation and Legislative Budget and Research. They are meeting to consider the federal government's social intervention program.
This 8th Assembly has taken it as a case of extreme importance to monitor the expenditure of every kobo of government and be able to report to the country the level of implementation of all government programs. It is in this regard that this meeting has been called. We wish to create a synergy between you, the executive who execute the program, and the National Assembly who monitor and oversight and are also directly answerable to our constituents. This will ensure that when briefing the House and the populace, full details and disclosure will be expected from you. Members of this committee have various questions to ask you as we strive to attain the desired level of disclosure. However, we believe that our synergy will assist you also to implement these programs efficiently and effectively, and thereby give comfort to Nigerians that it is not another wired elephant project of the government.
The lawmakers are meeting with the Senior Special Advisor to the President on Social Investment, Mrs. Miriam Uwais. One component of the program that catches the attention of most of the lawmakers is the school feeding program.
The school feeding program globally is done on two bases. One, when there is low enrollment in schools. Two, when there is malnutrition, the level of comprehension in school by the children is very low. As he did said, as it is today, most of our schools have big deficit in terms of infrastructure. And we may have malnutrition, as it is said in the Northeast. But again, the program is not targeted at the Northeast. It's targeted everywhere. So, borrowing from the Kaduna example, I represent Nigeria, I lived in Kaduna, and I have done a lot of research on school feeding program in Kaduna. The targeting of a 70 naira as a maximum threshold for feeding in schools is not realistic. Even the so-called Kaduna feeding program, a lot of those people or the caterers or whatever that provide those foods today are very reluctant in taking foods to schools because the 70 naira is not going to support feeding a child per day.
The federal government was feeding every prisoner with 250 naira. Now we have to review it to about 450 to 500 naira per prisoner. And here are we talking about our own people. We are talking of feeding Nigerians with 40 to 70 naira. I don't know how it is. If we are crying that we cannot even feed prisoners with 250, we have increased it, prisoners.
The presidential aide explains that the program is aimed at providing nutrition for school children and encouraging school enrollment in the states.
There are 11 million children out of school. Now, it is not just those 11 million out of school. There's a need to empower women who are caterers, who can cook in the communities. So there's a value chain there. They are buying utensils, they're buying coolers, they're getting an amount of money every 10 days. That will help them. Then there's an agricultural, there's a local farmer organization in each state. They are assured of consistent income also. So it's a whole series of value additions that come in. So it's not just about education, it's also about the health of the child. And I'm from Kano, actually. I am from Kano, and I've studied what happened in Kano. And it is true, there were huge numbers that came. Parents would because the quality of food in the school was better than the quality of school and the food at home. So when it was time for feeding, children would come with their siblings to come and eat. So what we're trying to do is also stimulate productivity in the communities by empowering the women who cook. We're trying to get the farmers to ensure that every time they grow something, there are off-takers.
The lawmakers then advised that coordinating units should be set up at both federal and state levels to ensure that the implementation goes unhindered.
Good morning.